You get about 1,000 waking minutes every day. And right now, wellness culture seems to be competing for all of them. In this episode, I'm sharing 3 overarching trends, really shifts that help you spend those minutes in a way that makes life easier, not harder, and hopefully more enjoyable too. We experience 1,000 waking minutes on average every day. How are you spending yours? I'm Dr. Wendy Bazilian, and you're listening to 1,000 Waking Minutes. I can't wait to connect with you here with practical ways to eat well, move daily, and be healthy, to optimize every waking minute you live for a happier, healthier life. Thank you for sharing some of your waking minutes with me today. Let's get started.
I'm saying yes to better days, yes. I'm on my way, yes. It's gonna be okay, yeah.
Hello, I'm Dr. Wendy Bazilian, and welcome to 1,000 Waking Minutes. I'm so glad you could join me here today. And still, a happy New Year's greetings to you. As we begin this new year, it seems like we're all talking about trends, and indeed, I will be today too. But I decided I wanted to look at them a bit differently. And I wanted to take them on not as sort of fleeting fads, but as patterns. And so I looked at some cultural patterns that we're seeing and the forces that are shaping how we're approaching health right now. For a long time, the path to health has felt like this frantic scramble, especially this time of year, but a frantic scramble to find like the newest and the loudest fix. And I certainly know that I've been at that rush at times, and maybe you have been as well. Whether it's a new diet, a device, a biohack, so to speak, a new medication, and we'll get into that a little bit. Suddenly, there's all these things, and we sort of like lose a grip on what fits us. But I think the most powerful shift that's happening right now is actually a collective movement toward what I'm calling discernment over distraction. That's the moment that we all can stand in front of the endless picture shelf of wellness products and wellness things and trends and ask, wait a second, is this actually worth my time and effort? Does this even fit me and my life? It's like a pause, and I talk a lot about pauses in our 1,000 Waking Minutes. But this is when we start to realize that noise is just noise, and what we're truly searching for is our own personal setup and signal that we want a little bit of clarity with, a little intentionality, and I love the word intention because that's forward thinking, and it has flexibility built in, and a little evidence. So clarity, intentionality, and evidence. So the goal, of course, and you know this, is not to adopt every single trend, but build those systems, a reliable system to be able to filter what gets saturated. And so the question can shift then from what's new to what's worth acting on now for me, and what's really worth it for me right now in my reality, my life right now, because our lives change and we enter new phases, new seasons, new timing. What in my reality right now, and for my goals overall right now. So that's what we're talking about today. We're focusing on what I've framed up as 3 powerful shifts. And they're sort of like overarching trends to make wellness simpler and more impactful. So we're going to be talking about efficiency, enhancement, and connection. So 3 shifts that sort of hold and host our trends that we can fit into our reality. And they, within them, have some of the most prominent trends woven in, and the ones that matter and that are real and maybe unwavering or new and compelling, but again, have substance to them, I think. So let's break down these intentional shifts. And I'm going to ask you, as I ask myself at this time of year, what are my intentions? How can I be more strategic with my waking minutes every day? So the first is the shift toward efficiency. And again, you may already be working on this. I'm not to say that you aren't, but sort of the overarching trends that I'm seeing in wellness. So when I frame this up as a word, it's an arc that I would encourage us to be aware of and I want to bring to your attention. And underneath this, and there's a few other ones, but today I'm going to talk about the freezer renaissance, I'm calling it, and purposeful portion. So two trends that are very real trends, and you'll see people talking about them in the media under what I call efficiency. So get the idea there, and that's how we're framing each of these three shifts today. So two trends under dietary efficiency. So I'm focusing on our diet, our way of eating today, and getting more nutrition per bite and per dollar. Two things that are highly relevant right now, and you'll see why as I discuss them a little bit further. More nutrition per bite and per dollar. That's the efficiency there. And let's talk about it being New Year's, because efficiency really was my word of the year last year. I find myself every year doing a little reflection, and I set sort of an intention, and I set forward motion and my sights on what's next. And if you've been listening for a while, you know I'm not big on rigid resolutions. And in fact, I did a whole episode on that last year around this time. Those kind of resolutions often fight against our human nature rather than working with it. They're so rigid and deterministic. They're so resolute, hence the word. You either succeed or you fail. And right there, you're almost invariably already failing before you get started. So ixnay to that. But life and health and goals are dynamic and not static. And where I'm sort of meandering, sorry for a second, is about efficiency. So I love the idea of setting an intention. And personally, for many years, I set sort of like a word or a phrase that sort of is a guiding idea. It might be something that I take into my life all the time, but this particular year, I'm going to thread it. I'm going to make sure that it's sort of front and center in my mind because I'm working on it for a certain reason. And when I went through the process last year, I kept coming back to efficiency, and that's what I set. And now I'm going to do it again. I've never done 2 years the same exact word. I'm doing efficiency again, so I've just declared it. And whew, that feels good. Some of the reflection is already behind me, and I know what I'm going to focus on, again, as a certain thread that I tease through. But I also know that the word efficiency, which is why I'm queuing this up, can sound a little cold sometimes and maybe a little bit corporate, and I'm calling it this big global trend. And it's sort of like a buzzword of sorts. But this isn't about a whole self. It's like a core consideration that I'm bringing to various roles and environments in my life to bring my best self, to bring my best work, to do my best. But I can also think about being efficient with those ways, the words, and our practices. And that's me. So you will do you. But when I think of it that way, and hopefully you too, maybe it doesn't feel so cold. I think it can be thoughtful. And that was my intent. And that's where I think efficiency can be also with nutrition and nutrition per bite. So if we put our science hats on for a second, it can be a beautiful and deeply biological consideration, efficiency. If you think about how our body always wants to heal itself, it wants to work with ourselves, I think that this is an important consideration. And as I choose it for a second year, and having learned a lot last year, made some strides, but still working to do it more, I want to talk about how biologically our body works toward efficiency and how some of these trends are fitting within that, and they may fit into your life as well. In nature, efficiency isn't about like hustle or squeezing in more for less into the day. It's actually about smart energy conservation and sort of the goal of getting more accomplished and more strategic, and yes, sometimes fewer steps or maybe a shorter time. But if you think about it, you know how a river finds the smoothest path downhill around the rocks, or how our brain tries to start like automating tasks so that we don't burn out. It's not about like being robotic, but finding a path of least resistance so we have energy left for the things that actually do matter. So the mindset of efficiency here, of getting the maximum return on investment for the time, energy, and money we spend, is the major pattern that I'm seeing across the food landscape right now. And for real reason. The economy is tough right now because of some of the trends. Some people are on diet weight loss medications, the GLP-1 agonists, and others. There's a lot of other things contending for why we might need to. Intermittent fasting, I'll name a few in a minute, but they're coming to mind, to get more nutrition per bite. And think about our 1,000 waking minutes every day. Our reality is demanding that we be smarter with our time. Our lives certainly aren't slowing down. The grocery bills are not shrinking. So, two of the growing trends that fit in this space of dietary efficiency and this need for more nourishment value and the health impact of every single bite counting and every single dollar spent counting is driving these trends. So, first is in the freezer section of all things, and I'm sort of calling it the freezer renaissance. It's one of the most interesting and sort of like quietly marching and important shifts right now. And there's been a few notable media articles on this as well, from Forbes to Whole Foods named it as a trend. Freezer fine dining, they called it. And if you remember back when the freezer aisle, especially for convenience, really was all about compromise. And it was really about convenience, but you compromise. You'd have the TV dinner of the 70s and 80s to make it less work demand in the kitchen to bring a meal to the table. And those were quick fixes, and they sometimes fell short on quality, to be honest. Well, that era evolved, and it's really changing. The modern freezer, if you start looking and you'll see it, has become a destination for nutrient-rich, higher quality, and incredibly convenient foods. Not every single one, but you'll see more of that. More with flavor and more with high nutrition per bite. So we're finally letting go of sort of the old, outdated misconception that fresh is always best. Now, you know I love fresh, and I will always encourage you to the fresh produce and to engage in your farmers markets when it's in season for you. But the truth is that our freezing technology, like flash freezing, really has changed things a lot. They can freeze food at its peak of ripeness and lock in nutrients, peak nutrients as well, often preserving them better than produce that's been sitting on a shelf or been transported for a while. There have been some studies on that out of Cornell and others. And we're seeing everything from globally inspired meals, chef crafted and high protein options. We're seeing a lot in the freezer aisle. And this whole sort of renaissance, this rebirth of sorts, is answering that efficiency question, sort of like, how can I get high quality food on the table quickly that has high nutrition? And by the way, is affordable as well. And the freezer is offering that sort of deliciously. And I think it's pretty smart. So I encourage you to take a look at that. We'll dive into that more in other episodes, maybe how to do it. But it's not about being lazy. You can find great stuff in the freezer now, and that's a big trend underneath that idea of efficiency. The second part of this efficiency pattern then is the rise of purposeful portions. That's a mouthful, but purposeful portions. So this conversation has absolutely changed from volume, getting more volume on the plate, which has always been an encouraging, something that dietitians have encouraged, get more volume in your fruits and vegetables, but toward more nutrient density again per bite. So nutrition per bite and per dollar again. And we're seeing a real pattern for various reasons, and I'll touch on a couple of them. People, believe it or not, are consuming less food overall. And this isn't just a one-factor deal here. Aging can prompt that. Becoming an empty nester, sometimes the volume of food goes down, or what you want to put on the table or prepare goes down. some intentional practices like intermittent fasting, for example. And this factor, it's been noted in major outlets. Almost every single media outlet is discussing right now the growing number of people who are on those GLP-1 agonists, those GLP-1 medications that are really driving down hunger, but necessitating better nutrition in the calories in the food and the portions they are consuming. So here's a really powerful ROI. I talk in sort of returns on investment or returns on intention on this focus on powerful and purposeful portions. Biggest health span conversation today is about muscle mass. People are really talking about preserving muscle mass as we age. And muscle is a critical metabolic and longevity marker. So it's a marker that we measure when we're aging, how well you're aging, and it's a marker of longevity, of risk factor for how soon we might perish or how long we might live. So this is especially vital for older adults, for postmenopausal women, and people on GLP-1 medication. Really, really important. Rapid weight loss, especially as we're seeing on the GLP-1 meds, can lead to a 15 to 25% lean muscle mass loss, or up to 40% of total loss of the weight. So let me restate that. When there's rapid weight loss, as many individuals are seeing on GLP-1s, and for other reasons, but GLP-1s in particular, doctors and researchers who are following this are showing that this rapid weight loss can lead to a 15 to 25% loss of lean muscle mass. So we've got to protect that. That's super important. And you're seeing a lot of attention that's going to be paid right now on what happens not only during while you're taking the injections and the GLP-1 meds, but after when you go off. Maintaining muscle through resistance training and the purposeful nutrient dense portions, the purposeful portions that are rich in quality protein, rich in the micronutrients that help us metabolize and use those nutrients. It's crucial. Not only it's always been crucial, but it's crucial now for preserving our strength and our metabolic integrity for the long run. And this reinforces why every bite must count more than ever before. So we know that these numbers that I just shared with you always vary by individual, and how one achieves weight loss can be in part controlled by working with a registered dietitian, working with a certified exercise trainer, working with your doctor who knows your medical history best, that you trust, but I should say, it's so critically important to think about this efficiency context if you are following any of these practices that I mentioned, the medication, maybe just eating less, maybe intermittent fasting, making your bites count in terms of quality of nutrition. And protecting muscle mass has to be part of that equation. So if you're naturally or intentionally eating less, the old advice of eat more, like more volume or build bigger volume on the plate, becomes less relevant. In fact, it could become totally irrelevant, and it demands that we seek nutrition. There's no less need for the nutrients we have. And in fact, one could argue that we need more. We need more quality. In fact, the World Health Organization, I thought I mentioned this just very recently, this past fall, announced that undernutrition, so the word undernutrition, but undernutrition, which is now defined, will become a diagnosable condition in the ICD-9, the official diagnosis code book, by 2027. Before we had malnutrition there, like stark malnutrition, but now undernutrition will be a diagnosable condition. That's how important this is. So it's no longer about just the size of the plate and are you getting more from what you actually eat. The balance is not just on your macros, and you hear that word thrown around, but macros are your protein, carbs, and fat. Sometimes people put fiber in there as well, but also your micros, your vitamins, your minerals, your phytonutrients as well, and getting those in abundance. So this is a revolution. Every bite needs to count, and it can be intentional. So we see the freezer renaissance that I mentioned before. to help us meet those nutritional gaps by building convenience through higher quality options there and purposeful portions. I'm not just watching it, but strategically looking for opportunities to do so. So, what does this mean for you right now? It means thinking about efficiency, that word, efficiency. It's not just about saving time, but giving yourself sort of a nutritional safety net of sorts, recognizing with all the constraints we face, time and budget, our changes in appetite, maybe the season of life we're in, any health conditions we're contending with, those can actually force us to make smarter and more intentional choices. So it can allow you to give your freezer a second look, maybe clear out. This is a good time of year to do a little spring cleaning. I call it New Year's cleaning. Clear out some things that you don't need there, have been sitting around, and make some space for some smart choices. Reassess what you consider convenience food and use your discerning eyes and mind. You don't need a huge plate either to get great nutrition, which is great. And we'll explore that further. And we always do when we talk about nutrition in this podcast. And when you're thinking about purposeful portions, let me just give you a couple examples. Maybe it's like adding something. And I've talked about swaps, nutritional swaps and synergies. But let's think about adding more nutrition to what you're already eating in the same portions you have. So maybe it's like adding like finely chopped mushrooms into your ground meat for tacos, for example, or in your meat sauce, bolognese sauce for pasta. It's an easy way to get a powerful compound called ergothioneine. Some researchers and some colleagues of mine have recently called it ergo for short, but ergothioneine, which is a really important antioxidant that you'll be hearing more and more about. It's been research underway for a while, more than a decade, 2 decades probably, but you'll start hearing more about it because research in observational studies and other research is starting to show a link and association to better cognitive function and brain health. So getting mushrooms into your purposeful portion, into your burger meat, your ground taco meat, your bolognese sauce. Other purposeful portions might be including like a handful of prunes, which have been associated with bone health, or potatoes for fiber or potassium into foods that you're already consuming, getting more per bite. So that shift is giving us permission to prioritize a little bit differently our nutrient density and the value that we can get over sheer quantity or eat more on the plate, but getting more in your bite as well. So that's efficiency. We're not hustling like Harry Scary to get efficiency done, and certainly not more rules. But hopefully that framed it a little bit for you. Just smarter return on your time, on your budget, and on your appetite. So the second shift here is enhancement. This is where we stop thinking about more discipline and more restriction and stop doing, stop eating, stop, this. But we start thinking about those small additions that I love to talk about with frequency to make what we're already doing work better. So I sort of snuck that in the purposeful portion just a moment ago, but this is under the big header enhancement. So this trend this year aligns with the idea of intentionality, certainly, and it moves beyond the plate and into our routines as well and our mindset. So if the first pattern was all about the dietary efficiency, the next is about nutritional enhancement. And it's the art of making every meal better without making it harder. Intentional additions is what I want to frame this up as, or a plus up philosophy. This philosophy, you can call it that, is all about adding a sliver, a sprinkle, a drizzle, a handful. And I will continually do that this year, talk about things like that in those terms. Something that will boost the nutrition of your existing food easily. It's a super powerful concept because it, one, focuses on the positive. It moves away from deprivation and toward contribution. So thinking of this as an analogy, I was trying to think, well, how can we frame this up? And I was thinking of it like a symphony orchestra. You can have a good melody with just strings. It sounds beautiful. The strings are just playing away. But to make that real sound, which is just gorgeous, richer and bigger and fuller and more complex, in other words, to give it depth, you need to intentionally add other instruments like brass instruments, the woodwinds, the percussion. You need to add to it. And maybe you didn't know it was missing in the beginning, but when you add to it, you see instantly, or when it comes to nutrition, you start to feel instantly what those intentional additions have brought. So, this is what it does to your food. It doesn't change the main dish, it doesn't change the melody line, it just makes the nutritional value richer and more complete. So, this trend is directly connected to some of the most important nutrition conversations that are happening right now. One of them is, and you'll see this by others, not just me, but I've been saying it a lot lately, fiber. Fiber is the quote, new protein. Protein isn't going anywhere. It's still a mega or meta trend, but we've been talking about it for a long time. And we've talking about protein almost like exclusive to the mega trend extensively. Fiber is a non negotiable, incredibly important cornerstone to the diet for satiety. That's the feeling of fullness or satisfaction. For gut health, which is on everyone's minds. For blood sugar balance, for cholesterol and lipid management, which is related to cardiometabolic and heart disease. And this is where it really rings true in this cardiometabolic space. The average adult in the United States consumes only about 15 to 16 grams of fiber per day, if they're lucky. And it falls dramatically short of the 25 to 38 grams that are recommended. And I'm being generous when I say that, because if you look at the data from the Dietary Guidelines for Americans Committee report and other sources, only about 6% of the US population is meeting the recommendations for fiber every day. Only 6%. That means 94% of us are falling short. This is a gap that is so worth closing. And this is something about why the plussing up or the intentional additions is so important. I just did a recent episode on fiber maxing. You can go back and listen to that if you wish to, and sort of the trend. And I'm not here to support the whole fiber stacking approach that fiber maxing is. And it got so much attention on TikTok and social media and whatnot. But the idea of more fiber, I really like that. And I said as much in that episode. But here, the intentional additions of fiber, the return on that investment is massive. I'll give you an analogy because I love those. If you think of protein as, we've heard this, the building blocks. So they're like the bricks of your house. Fiber is sort of the scaffolding. It's the mortar of sorts. It's sort of, we get the structure in our bones and our muscles, of course, but you need fiber to hold everything together, to regulate the traffic flow, keep the internal environment clean, keep us satisfied. So that's why simple and small sort of intentional additions, the plus ups, are really an important trend that's happening and that we need to pay attention to with fiber. So let's paint a scenario here. Say you're having a typical weekday breakfast, maybe yogurt and a banana, something easy, grab and go. It's good, but it might be a little light on the fiber there. So an intentional addition isn't just like looking for yogurt that's got fiber in it. I've seen that before. But really, maybe it's about adding something like 2 tablespoons of chia seeds and maybe soak them the night before into the yogurt. I have a friend who does that. Or ground flaxseed. It's something that takes like 10 seconds or less. That won't change the flavor too much. It might change the viscosity or the texture a little bit, but you find what you like. But suddenly you're contributing 5, 6, 8 grams of fiber. Not to mention there, you've boosted your omega-3s also. And it really transforms a good breakfast into a great nutritionally powerful breakfast. So that's one way in the fiber space. Fiber is the new protein, and under enhancements is the shift we're talking about. Next, I want to talk just briefly about another trend that actually I've been fielding some interviews in the media about recently that I'm calling the fat reset, thinking beyond the word fat, which still scares us. And you'll see there's also an enhancement ideas circulating around fat. It's a cool trend, I think. And this fat reset is like how the pendulum has swung to a more pro fat area. I'm not going to go into seed oils right now, but we're talking about fats. And the message here is not just like add fats for enrichment, but intentionally adding the right types of fats in the right matrix. So maybe within a food type. So when we talk about working with beneficial fats like omega-3s, surely you've been talking or hearing about omega-3s from marine sources like salmon and sardines, or the evolving and exciting research that's happening around plant omega-3, ALA, alpha-linolenic acid, that's found prominently in walnuts and chia seeds and flax, we're starting to hear about like nuance, like where they're found and what they do, and adding them, getting them intentionally in. Or we hear about the monounsaturated fats found in avocados, for example. Or we hear about olive oil, but think olives themselves as well. And of course, that olive oil that I love and that we all love to enjoy in our households. So the magic isn't in the fat molecule itself, it's in the food and the food matrix and the type of fat. So the avocado and the nuts and the seeds, they're all whole foods and they have a matrix. So they are delivering other things. Take avocado, you've got the monounsaturated fat. You've also got the fiber. You also have phytonutrients. You've got other things going on that are powerful. You take the nuts and you've got the omega-3s or other polyunsaturated fats, depending on what tree nut you're talking about. And you have the fiber and you have some notable protein. You take chia seeds, same. You got high fiber, high omega-3 fats, and you've got the matrix that are robust in other antioxidants and phytochemicals. So you're getting also dozens of micronutrients while you're getting the fat. So we're talking and leading with the fat. So this is where I call it sort of the fat reset. And here's some key scientific evidence that's so important we often forget. Fats themselves help us absorb the other stuff. So when we're talking about enhancement, fats help us absorb the fat-soluble vitamins and minerals. Vitamin A, E, D, K helps us monumentally, in some cases, significantly increase the absorption and availability of certain phytochemicals like carotenoids. So this is so wonderful to think about and remind us about that when you eat a big, beautiful salad, let's say, if you add the fat, you're literally building synergy. It's working together with all those vegetables and the olive oil or the chia oil, or you add sliced avocado, or you add a handful of walnuts or other nuts. You're literally adding value. When it's not there, you're losing some of the value that is sitting right there in the same bite on the plate. You're losing some of it. So it's super important to think enhancement. And I love talking about synergy. Some of you know I did a whole episode on nutritional synergy that I had a lot of fun with. And I'll continue to talk about that. But it's really how when two foods come together or a group of foods come together, they help each other out. So they both have their own unique, wonderful attributes, but they amplify by being together in some unique ways. So the obvious choice here is like making smart choices when it comes to your fats. When your typical lunch is a colorful salad, for example, make sure that you have a fat source. Hopefully with something that's got more of the matrix there, so you can do your olive oil, but add some nuts, seeds, or avocado. You can do some swaps that way. If you're old school and using the lemon, still use the lemon, but add some other fats there. So slicing, sprinkling, drizzling, just like I said before, those intentional additions. And you'll unlock and also increase the absorption of some key nutrients. This is how you make your bites work harder and smarter without doing a whole lot more. and it's harmonious, right? So that's back to that orchestral analogy before. And I must mention just for a moment, just because it's been really fun to see, we're talking about fat, and I talk a lot about avocados, and I have the great privilege to work with the avocado research arm or the group that supports avocado research in science. And I've been noticing, and maybe you have too, that avocados have become sort of a cultural darling. And I find that really fun. I have some slippers with avocados on them. They've transcended their nutritional piece to be cute and wonderful in a variety of ways. I was just in Spain recently with my family, and we stumbled into this store that's very popular in Europe. And they have an entire avocado line, pens and tote bags and slippers and plushies and all kinds of things. So I couldn't resist. I've got the slippers, and they're cheerful little characters, So think about that and think about your opportunity to do intentional additions. And let's make more wonderful, high quality foods into cute items that can remind us by looking at our toes or on our sofas. I'm looking at a sofa just now, and we can see them to remind us as well. Okay, so moving on here, we did efficiency and enhancement. The last pattern that I want to talk about today is connection. And it really is the one that helps us determine whether the first two will really stick. So efficiency, enhancement, connection. And this is one that I think embodies the whole year's sort of commitment toward smarter living and taking on wellness trends that really impact our own reality. And this is a shift towards more connection. We talked about dietary efficiency, nutritional enhancement. So those are two eat well trends. Now we're moving a little to mind and spirit, or the be healthy side of things. After many years, since the pandemic hit us now 5 years ago, we have had a lot of isolated living, and coming out of that has been slow for many. I have talked to many people who are still sort of making their way back into the world. And I say that with a smile, but I mean that with sincerity. We increasingly have found that we need to and have benefited from relying heavily on our screens. We deal with so much like sort of perpetual low grade stress, that stress that also increases inflammation. But I'm happy to say that people are talking about and engaging in activities that make this a pattern worth noting and hopefully participating in. And maybe you've got great examples. A growing sort of counter movement toward intentional rest and genuine interaction with others and with hobbies and with recalibrating in the real world. So I like to think of this as the ecosystem of you. We all have our own little ecosystem and how we participate in our community and in our world. And just as like our biological systems can fail if one element goes down, like if the soil is depleted or we have drought one year, or if there's neglect, so too with our own personal ecosystem, our well-being can start to collapse if certain things go down, and connection's a big one. If we focus solely on diet and ignore our environment or our mind and our community, then things can not go well for our well-being. And remember, we talk about eat well, move daily, be healthy. These are the three legs on a stool. These are the three strong sides of a triangle. Without any one of them, the stool collapses, under us instead of wobbling and becoming resilient. And the science is staggering in this space, which is why I think that some of this counter movement that I hope that you're participating in, if not paying attention to, and you will now, loneliness is massively important to take a look at right now in the statistics. It's a critical public health issue. People are lonely. Studies are showing that people with stronger social bonds have 50% increased likelihood of survival versus those that have fewer social connections. So think about that. Loneliness and isolation are critical public health issues, but having social connection can bring a 50% increased likelihood of survival. That's a massive shift from making some intentional changes. And this is according to the US Surgeon General advisory from 2023. So it dates back a couple years, but it's still prominent. And that's why this sort of trend is ticking up, which I'm super happy to share today as a pattern. So this need for genuine connection is why this pattern is manifesting in these ways. So first, what I like to call sort of analog hobbies. I was sort of resistant to that. I sort of came up with that and I was like, can we call it analog hobbies? But non-digital activities didn't sound to resonate as much, but non-digital activities is what I'm talking about. Going back to analog. And a really great article came out talking about the medicine of making or makers or crafting. We are seeing a pattern, particularly among the younger generations. They're smart. They're coming up and they're really smart. And it's often toward what are being called like grandma hobbies, to say it nicely. Things like knitting, crafting, baking, doing puzzles as a group, and even building models. There was an article recently in The Guardian that even put it like this. They called it crafts are like medicine. So these are activities that literally require us to put the phone down. And they require us to reconnect with the physical and tangible world. So it's reconnecting with touching and seeing and doing. So you can do that on your own and you can do it with others. And why this is so important is because what I just said, that statistic. And it sort of makes sense. Anyone from my generation might be saying like, duh, that makes sense. But it's because these hobbies spark a sense of delight and connection. They take us away from the digital world that drains us. They engage our hands, as I mentioned, and they force our attention to slow down and our attention span to perhaps refocus and be able to be on one thing for longer than, oh, shiny nickel, oh, squirrel, all the things that distract us all the time. So it's a purposeful act of creating something. Sometimes you have something to show for it even, which I think is really cool. And it reminds us that there are opportunities in the non-digital world to focus and to have some rest. And it's a crucial piece of emotional efficiency. So back to that word efficiency again. And practically speaking, this means you start to treat your downtime like a necessary appointment. And I've talked about this before. You schedule in your me time. And if it's easy to take it off because you're sharing a family calendar and they see that as time for you, schedule it with your initials as if it's a person. M.E. That's a person. It's you, but it's a person. And you can't negotiate that time. It's your time, your downtime. And it's like intentionally trading 30 minutes of maybe doom scrolling on your phone to doing something. Maybe it's even something that is homemaking for you in the maker's space, like organizing your spice rack, which can be oddly satisfying. Or finally planting some seeds, maybe. Like I collect little packets of seeds because I get so enamored when I'm at the nursery and then they sort of sit there for a while, planting them. But an intentional finite task that you can do. So the other shift underneath this connection I just want to briefly mention is the return to community fitness. So we have our non-digital activities and we also have community fitness. And this doesn't just mean joining a gym or a class, but people really valuing the shared experience, like going together, showing up together. And we're seeing a significant growth in in-person meetups to do that, in making time together, not over a meal at a restaurant, but over a Peloton or using a class pass together and getting a subscription and then exploring classes together as you would going to the movies or trying a new cafe. And people who are genuinely and successfully engineering their time around something that for many is like a shared struggle and where accountability really matters. So something like movement and exercise. So the key ingredient here is the connection that makes it happen, not just like calorie burning. And then you get the benefit of that as well. So scheduled accountability, the shared goals, showing up, not facing a challenge alone. That's all part of the connection. And Again, to make it practical, this means prioritizing your shared commitment with others, agreeing like two friends to show up for each other, or a dedicated group, a group that works out together. And I've seen a lot of this in sort of the parkour and the CrossFit space when they rely on their community to egg them on, to show up for them, to do it in an organized way. And even, in the school setting at my daughter's school, a growing number of teachers and staff are recording their activity. They're just writing it down in their minutes and they're encouraging each other. And the list is filling. It connects even like while they're in the classroom. And even if they didn't do it together, they're connecting on this like sign up sheet. And like then they can say when they see each other crossing a path, hey, nice job. Or, oh, you're going to take a walk next week. Or maybe we do it together. Or way to go. It's something that's both accountability, but it's also something that's connected to others. So we just covered a lot, and I covered it in a lot of time and words. So just to summarize a little bit, the focus this year, I think, in the major patterns or shifts under which trends, and we all love those trends, fall are efficiency, not hustling, but smart living. We talked about the dietary efficiency, the freezer renaissance, and the purposeful portions in that. We talked about nutritional enhancement. So those intentional additions, like plussing up the fiber is the new protein, putting that in, and that fat reset and thinking about not only what else can come along with the fat, but being strategic about what kinds of fat and what the fat does for you on the plate. And then we talked about the shift to connection. So the takeaway, hopefully for you, as with me, and I will listen back to this as well, is to be intentional, to set intentions with our resources that we already have. We have food, we have energy, we have time. And it's about building a better ecosystem for yourself. And before you try on the trend, say, is this one that makes sense for me? So optimizing our waking minutes is important. So as we wrap this, and I encourage you, we're not doing a mindful minute today, but I encourage you to take a minute to pause and reset and think about these different trends and patterns for the year. Let's think about the beauty of intentionality. It's flexible, it's forward thinking, and you can practice and become a master of intentional additions. You can forget about restrictive eating for a minute or the whole year, if you will, and you can add high value nutrition per bite, those fiber add-ons, all the things that we talked about. You can find your fitness connection. Maybe think about that. What might you like to do or try? Who might you like to do it with? How can you build that in with some community fitness? And commit to the great disconnect, the rules of disengagement. I also talked about that in an episode. Think about how to make your life better with some non-digital time this year. It's trending. Find your analog hobby, something to get your hands on so that your hands are off your phone, off the screen, and your eyes turned away from that as well. Produce something, make something, whether it's knitting or doing a puzzle or cooking something on your own that you've been meaning to do or with others. So with the final moments here as a wrap up, I did pull a quote that I thought I would share with you that I thought was fitting for today. So the poet Mary Oliver, I'm sure many of you listening have heard of her. She has some beautiful, beautiful things that she says in her poetry and in her philosophy and words. But she reminds us, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? What do you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And I think one of the most powerful ways we can answer this question together today is bringing some intentionality, some quiet intentionality, some personal intentionality. So we can make an elegant rebellion against the chaos of over choice and the too much and all the trends that we feel like we have to participate in, and try to be efficient, enrich our meals and our lives, and make more connections in 2026. I hope you'll join me with that and focus on the quality over the quantity and the presence over being hurried. And yes, more purposeful portions, perhaps, when it comes to our nutrition and our move daily and our be healthy. So let's look at that together. And I'm so grateful for you to be here, kicking off a new year together and being part of this community. I'm pleased to be a partner and your host here on 1000 Waking Minutes. And of course, as always, if you've enjoyed today or you enjoy the topics, please share them or share the podcast. Please write a review or write to me. Leave a comment, a nice comment, wherever you get your podcasts. It truly helps bring those of us who are wanting more of this together and to communicate. You can follow along and stay connected at wendybazilian.com. And please join at Instagram at 1000 Waking Minutes. I'm Wendy Bazilian, your host and partner here at 1000 Waking Minutes. And until next time, be well. Thank you for tuning in to 1000 Waking Minutes. A huge thank you to our amazing collaborators, including our production and marketing teams, and Gabriela Escalante in particular. To the ultra-talented Beza for my theme music, my lifelong friend and artist, Pearl Price Photography and Design, to Daniel Ballantyne, Jen Nguyen, Joanna Powell, and of course my family, and everyone working tirelessly behind the scenes. And to you, our valued listeners, I so appreciate your support. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving a comment, writing a review, and giving 1000 Waking Minutes, that's us, a 5-star rating. And please hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Please follow and stay connected at wendybazilian.com. And don't forget to share with your friends. Your support helps us grow and bring you more great content. Until next time, find some simple opportunities to optimize those 1000 waking minutes each day.
I'm saying yes